to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan, for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years, so what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed.
Two things could be true at the same time. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Kamala Harris, Fox 5 interview, and guess what? She went on an outrage. I'm not saying she went on an outrage the way people always want to claim Trump is on an outrage because he says something that you don't like. This is not her saying something we don't like. This is just her not knowing how to answer correctly. And not only not knowing how to answer correctly, but also going on an outburst because she doesn't like the questions being asked. That's not how it works. You understand what I mean? And she always keeps saying how, oh, Trump is gonna go after journalists when they say what they don't like. But listen to how she sounds. I mean, this is just the beginning right here. You got to see it for yourself. Watch how she responds in regards to the question being asked on immigrants receiving licenses. Let's see how this play out.
Hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
Do your job or get the hell out.
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
See, I ain't gonna say the B word. I'm gonna say unstable creatures. It's my new word for y'all.
Now, one thing I need you to pay attention to, the cliche thing for them to say is like, all right, you know how you say, I plead the fifth? It is the same thing when they say, we are here to follow the law. She is not answering the question right there. All she is saying is, listen, that is the law, and we're following that, and that is it. That was a law, and don't question me. It's a law. You understand what I'm saying? But she always wants to say that, you know, Trump has no morals, etc., etc., and here she goes, the irony, right? Now on to the next question.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
No, but let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel, to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite seriously.
Ask yourself this, right? Of course you're the one who prosecuted because you were a prosecutor, right? Trump can't prosecute anyone. He's the president. So you see, when she talks like this, you know, some people who are not aware or paying attention, they're going to receive it like, you know what? She really did prosecute people. Trump never prosecuted anyone. So he's not ready to handle this kind of stuff, you know? He's not able to handle these serious kind of situations at hand. I mean, I would think that's how people would perceive this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what? You got to
happened
take
during
responsible for what
his
happened in your
presidency.
administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in
so
black and white.
would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law.
She will follow the law. That's what she keeps saying. She can't say yes or she can't say no. She's gonna follow the law. However, they're gonna spend your tax dollars on having sex changes for the prisoners. Does it make sense to you? That's what you're voting for? Let me know. Now on to the next question. Here she's being asked about immigration. He asked her a simple question where he's asking her a ball figure amount. It doesn't have to be exact, just a rough estimate. And she couldn't even answer that simple question. And guess what? People on the internet only took sound bites and said, oh, she ate. So I'm going to replay it so you can be the judge. Here it goes.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
Voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Answer questions.
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And
all right, let me stop it right there. I'm going to bring it right back. But wasn't that a simple question with just a simple response? I mean, to say, yeah, that's a great question, that's you getting ready to lie right there automatically. So let's go back to this, right? I'm going to bring it right back for you.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
Voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a
which
number.
is-
Do you
but-
think it's
but,
1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point.
That's the whole point.
Okay, the point is that we
He's
have
trying
a
to get
broken
to the
immigration
point.
system that needs to be repaired.
So your
And-
Homeland Security Secretary said that
Well, no,
85%
but
of
I'm not
apprehensions.
finished. I'm not finished. We have
It's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of
system
6 million people
that
have been
needs to be-
released
but
into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And
You hear what she said? Did you hear what she just said? She was beginning to answer. I mean, if we go back, right? He asked her the question at, let's see right now. He started speaking to her at 8 seconds. And at 102 seconds, at 1 minute and 1 second, she said she was beginning to answer. He asked her a question at the first 8 seconds of the video, and at the 1 minute and 1 mark, she decided to say, I was beginning to answer. Do you see what's going on here?
when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the CHIPS and Science Act,
She's about to say Trump,
before
watch.
the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish.
Some people may call it rude, but it seems like he's trying to rush because he has limited time. I understand how this journalism works, and you can tell he's trying to fit as much as he can, because somewhere down the line, it seems like someone said, hey, listen, we're going to have to eventually cut this short. And now, last minute, he has to minimize all the questions. So he's trying to get it all out, and he's not trying to allow her to do the word salad, where she, gets lost in her conversation and she never answers any question. He's trying to bring her back on track at the same note.
And the White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they
in the
didn't bring
middle
up
of
that bill.
responding to the point you're raising.
Okay.
You might as well just get out.
And I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill.
I believe she wanted more agents so that she could have a smoother passage. This way they could have allowed way more people in. Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Just pay attention to the message.
It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country. People. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue.
I hear you.
Wait a minute. She's the biggest game player when it comes to politics. I don't know what she's talking about right now. This is the gaslighting that we need to stop. I mean, to hear her say all of this right here is absurd. Y'all gotta wake up. We cannot allow this just to keep happening. Again, I'm not telling you who you should vote for, who you shouldn't vote for. But you should just pay attention to what's going on. All this she's saying right here is a bunch of hoopla. Don't listen to any of this right here. This is how they confuse you. This is how they confuse you. At the same time, they're deflecting.
But actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise.
She don't like that.
Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those
I think it's
families
really- I think
an
it-
apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There is no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying.
And we would have had more immigrants in this country. You gotta stop putting all the blame on Trump. The same way how people who support Kamala keep saying, oh, you can't blame everything on Biden. So then you can't blame everything on Trump at this point. You guys were in office for the last 3.5 years. So when you get into presidency, you can only talk crap about the most previous person, which is you, and what you guys done. You going back into a decade. So you want to talk about 10 years. The 10 years is who? 2 years Obama, 4 years Trump, and 4 years you guys. So, I mean, I know how to add up, so let's be serious right now.
Trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss. Sincerely.
You hear what she said? That's tricky right there. Because someone will listen to that and say, well, she did say she's sorry for her loss. I mean, don't you say that to people who you know and you had nothing to do with anything? That's just something you say to someone like as comfort. But she's not apologizing to them because she know that would be dangerous. You see, always pay attention to the words. These semantics, they can trick you, I'm telling you. Again, here she goes deflecting. He's asking her a question about what the mother just asked. And what did she say? She cannot get off of Trump's name. She keeps saying, let us not forget, we have an individual, etc., etc. I mean, why did she keep bringing him up? In every conversation, why she can't keep his name out of her mouth? You guys were in the current administration, so you should be talking about what you've done in the last few years. Check this answer out.
But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in
her?
all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
When?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before.
Oh, yeah?
Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are.
Last I could recall, he wanted to build a wall and you called him racist. I ain't forget about that. We did not forget about that right there.
that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents.
And here she goes explaining how her so-called economic plan is much better than Trump's plan, according to, or should we say allegedly according to, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, which he debunked and said that he begs to differ. And he also claims that the analysis weren't done by them, that was solely by an independent company. So when she keeps saying that, you know, Goldman Sachs and all these other people are backing her, listen, until I hear from their mouth, then I'll believe it. But for right now, we don't believe you. You need more people. Don't understand what I'm talking about? Watch this clip.
It's really quite remote. And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on
it was
plans for
different,
the
but
American
we'll
people,
move on.
I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need.
Really?
My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker,
Why do you
would
think more
ignite
people say-
inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are
Who's
the
he
facts.
looking at?
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and
She's
the
all
biggest
over the
corporations
place.
in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
What she
Would
said?
you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I noticed.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with,
be
you
one
know, 28
change.
days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So,
What?
you're not Joe
What kind of answer is that? We know you're not them, but what will change? You understand what I mean? Now, do you guys see it now?
Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My
here we
presidency
go.
will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes in to office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed.
All right, first off, Donald Trump hasn't been in office for the last decade, all right? Out of the last decade, he only had 4 of those years. And soon, you guys are gonna complete another 4 years, which leads to say Obama had the first 2 years out that decade. So with that being said, what are you talking about, Kamala? Huh? What are we talking about right now?
And implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally.
She's fried rice at this point. So with that being said, I will stop the video at this point right now. If you want to see the video in its entirety, you can definitely go to Fox channel and watch the entire video for yourself. I did not take out the best sound clips or sound bites so that we could go run that. No, I just try to shorten it enough so this way you guys can go see it on your own and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You will see the same as I saw. All right, with that being said, if you like reactions like this, consider hitting that like button. Definitely subscribe to the channel and also hit the notification bell. I really don't know why she went ahead and did this right here. She should have just been truthful at this point.